I met her on a Thursday. It was one of those late summer days in Portland where the sun drips gold through the trees, and time feels like it's breathing slower. I was standing outside a bookstore on Hawthorne, holding a coffee I hadn't tasted, flipping pages I wasn't reading. And then she walked by. A yellow sundress, a paint-stained canvas bag slung over her shoulder, and a strand of hair tucked behind one ear with that casual elegance women don't even realize they have. Her name was Emily. And the second she looked at me, no, through me, it was like every cliché I used to roll my eyes at suddenly made sense. "Are you gonna buy that book, or just look mysterious all day?" she said, nodding at the copy of The Bell Jar in my hands. I smiled. "I'm trying to decide if it's a tragic mood or a hopeful one today." She tilted her head. "Maybe it's both." We talked for 2 hours in front of that bookstore. Her laugh was soft and a little uneven, like it didn't quite trust itself yet. I told her my name was Jake, that I taught high school English, that I wrote poetry I never let anyone read. She said she was a freelance illustrator, mostly children's books, some album covers. Her art was messy, full of life, and heartbreaking in its honesty. That night, I walked her to her car, and we exchanged numbers. I told her I'd call. I did. The next morning. It wasn't long before we were spending every weekend together, hiking in Forest Park, making pancakes in her tiny kitchen with music playing too loud, sketching each other in the margins of notebooks. I wasn't looking for love. I didn't think I was even ready for it. But Emily, she didn't just knock down the walls I built around myself. She painted them. Turned them into windows. There was a way she'd look at me, right after a joke, or in those quiet 2 a.m. moments when the world went still, and it made me feel like I was finally being seen. Not as Jake, the teacher, or Jake, the guy who couldn't get over his last breakup. Just me. One night, while lying on her floor surrounded by canvases and open bottles of wine, she turned to me and said, "You know when you walk into a room and everything's loud, and then you see one person, and the noise just disappears?" "Yeah," I whispered. "That's you." We fell hard. There was no fear, no hesitation. Just warmth. We'd slow dance barefoot in her living room, drive to the coast at midnight just to hear the waves, read to each other under blankets while the rain tapped on the windows. Even the mundane was magic: grocery shopping, doing laundry, waiting in line for coffee. With Emily, everything meant something. I started writing again, really writing. I filled journals with poems about the freckles on her shoulder, the curve of her smile, the way she'd sing old songs out of tune on purpose just to make me laugh. She started painting more, too, wild, sweeping, emotional pieces that she said felt brave. Sometimes we talked about the future. A house with big windows. A dog. Maybe kids someday. But mostly, we just lived in the now. And it was perfect. Looking back, I think that's what makes it all so painful. We thought we had forever. But forever isn't always what it seems. It started with the small things. Emily began forgetting words in the middle of sentences. At first, she laughed it off. "My brain's just on vacation," she'd say, brushing her hand through her hair like she always did when something bothered her more than she let on. She'd lose her keys, misplace her sketchbook, leave the stove on once or twice. We joked about it. Then she forgot my birthday. Not just the date. She forgot what day it was while we were out celebrating. In the middle of dinner, candles glowing low, her favorite pasta in front of her, she looked at me with this blank confusion and whispered, "Why are we here?" I smiled, thinking she was teasing me. But the smile didn't return. Her eyes were glassy. Distant. And I knew, deep down, that something was wrong. We went to a doctor. Blood work. Scans. Tests I didn't understand. Emily made jokes in the waiting room, holding my hand tightly the way she always did when she was scared but didn't want to say it out loud. Days passed. Then a week. The call came on a rainy Tuesday. I still remember the sound of her voice after she hung up. "Hollow." Like something had cracked deep inside her chest and all the color drained out. They think it's neurological, she said quietly, barely louder than the rain on the glass. Something degenerative. I didn't know what to say. Neither did she. Things began unraveling after that. Her hands started shaking while drawing. Her once bold strokes turned hesitant, uneven. She stopped painting. Said the canvas was too loud. She'd forget where she was in the middle of conversations. She'd stare into space, as if watching a memory slip through her fingers before she could grab it. She was still Emily, still her, but pieces of her were fading like pencil sketches left out in the sun. I tried to be strong. I cooked, I cleaned, I told her everything would be okay. But at night, I'd sit in the car after running errands and scream into the steering wheel. I'd stare at her while she slept, wondering how something so full of light could be flickering out so soon. One night, she asked me, "Will you remember me when I don't?" And I broke. I held her like the world was ending, because in many ways, it was. The worst part wasn't the forgetting. It was the moments in between, when she remembered exactly what was happening to her. One morning, I found her in the studio, staring at a half-finished painting of us dancing in the rain. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I'm still here. I just can't stay." And I think that's when I started dying too. Not physically, but emotionally. Like I was losing oxygen, breath by breath, memory by memory. A week later, she disappeared. I woke up, and she was gone. No note. No phone. Just her yellow sundress folded neatly on the bed and the scent of lavender in the air. I searched everywhere. Called friends, hospitals, the police. Nobody had seen her. Her studio was untouched, as if she had just vanished from the world. And in a way, she had. After she disappeared, the world didn't stop, but I did. The days blurred. Time lost its shape. Morning, night, meals, work, it all felt pointless without her. I moved through everything like a ghost wearing my own skin. I wasn't Jake anymore. I was someone watching him from a distance, trapped behind glass, unable to scream. I stopped writing. I stopped answering calls. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Every corner whispered memories, her laughter in the kitchen, the way her fingertips brushed mine when she passed me coffee, the humming she did while sketching with a pencil between her teeth. I couldn't stay there. I started sleeping on the floor of her studio, wrapped in the blanket she used to curl up in when she painted. I'd lie on the hardwood for hours, staring at the unfinished painting of us in the rain. It felt like she'd left that piece of her behind on purpose. A goodbye in brushstrokes. The police filed a report. Voluntary disappearance, they said. No signs of struggle, no suspicious activity. Just, gone. Like a chapter ripped out of a book. But I knew her. She didn't just walk away. Not without a reason. Not without telling me. There were days when I tried to convince myself that maybe this was her way of protecting me, that she didn't want me to see her fade further. That maybe, in some twisted way, leaving was an act of love. But the truth? It felt like abandonment. And I hated myself for thinking that. I started looking for her. I went through every photo, every sketch, every note she'd ever written. I visited old cafes we loved, asked the baristas if they'd seen her. Nothing. I even talked to her sister in Seattle, who hadn't heard from Emily in months. She was scared too, but also angry. She always shuts down when things get hard, she told me. But this? This isn't just shutting down. This is disappearing. I scoured medical forums, Reddit threads, late-night support groups. I started researching neurological conditions, reading case studies, watching documentaries. I learned about rare cognitive disorders, early-onset memory diseases, dissociative fugue states, anything that could make sense of how someone could begin to vanish from themselves, and then the world. But knowledge didn't help. It just deepened the emptiness. I lost weight. Stopped sleeping. My coworkers stopped asking where I was. I think they just assumed I had a breakdown. Maybe I did. I looked in the mirror one morning and barely recognized the man staring back. Sunken cheeks. Bloodshot eyes. A hollow stare. The man Emily loved, the man who used to make her laugh with terrible poetry and surprise her with late-night sketchbook dates, he was gone. In his place was a shell. A shadow. And yet, I couldn't give up. Because giving up meant she was gone forever. One night, while cleaning the studio, I found something, a small journal wedged between two canvases. One I hadn't seen before. It was Emily's. The handwriting was uneven. Slipping. Some entries were barely legible. But one line stood out. Dated just 2 weeks before she disappeared. If they find out, they'll take everything from me. My heart froze. Who was they? Suddenly, everything shifted. This wasn't just about illness. This was something more. Something hidden. Something deliberate. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was suspicious. Angry. Desperate. And for the first time in months, I felt a pulse return to my chest. A flicker of purpose. If there was something being hidden from me, I would find it. If someone took her, they would regret it. I might have been a shadow of myself, but shadows still move. Still fight. Still haunt. And I was ready to follow this darkness wherever it led. I read that line over and over again. If they find out, they'll take everything from me. It burned in my brain like a scar I couldn't stop touching. That sentence changed everything. Up until now, I thought Emily had vanished because she was sick. Fading. Protecting me, maybe. But this wasn't just illness. It was fear. Someone had scared her into leaving. Or taken her. And I was done waiting. I started digging. I revisited everything with a new lens, looking not for sentiment, but for evidence. I tore through her emails, opened her sketchbooks one by one. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. She'd been drawing the same symbol over and over again in the margins, a circle with a triangle inside it, intersected by a jagged line. At first, I thought it was just abstract. But I found it again, this time on the back of a receipt from a medical lab. A lab I didn't recognize. I called the number on the receipt. Got stonewalled. Sorry, we have no record of that name. Please check the spelling. The voice was too rehearsed. Too careful. So I drove there. The place was located in a quiet industrial park on the edge of the city. No signs, no windows. Just a gray door and a buzzer. When I asked for Emily's full name, a woman behind the desk blinked twice, then said coldly, "You need to leave." My heart dropped. They knew her. That night, I told her sister everything, about the journal, the symbol, the lab. She sat in silence for a long time before finally whispering, "Oh my God, she didn't tell you." "Tell me what?" There was an experimental program she signed up for. Some kind of treatment. They promised cognitive stabilization. She said they were using art therapy combined with neurological mapping. She said they were helping her. Helping her? I choked. She's gone. And then it hit me. She hadn't disappeared because she wanted to. She disappeared because they took her. I called in a favor. One of my former students, Miles, had gone into cybersecurity. Now, he helped journalists uncover corporate abuse. I showed him everything I had. Within hours, he dug into the lab. It was a private research clinic called Corton Labs, owned by a parent company connected to an international biotech firm. No published studies. No FDA approval. But dozens of NDAs. And sealed lawsuits. What the hell were they doing to her? I asked. Miles looked at me with something between fear and pity. They were testing memory resequencing. Rewiring perception. It's supposed to help people with cognitive disorders, but some patients didn't come back the same. Some didn't come back at all. I had to see her. I didn't care about legality anymore. I didn't care about being polite. I just needed her back. So I went back to the clinic. This time, I broke in. It was late. Rain hammered the roof. I used a crowbar to force open a maintenance door, heart pounding like it might crack my ribs. Inside, the halls were cold and sterile. Buzzing lights. Surveillance cameras I prayed weren't connected to anyone awake. I found a storage room with patient files. Most names were blacked out, until I saw it. Emily Parker. Subject number 19. There were notes. Charts. Brain scans. Progress logs. And then one word stamped in red ink across the final page, transferred. Where? There was no location. Just a code, T5. Secure hold. I found her 3 days later. With Miles' help, I traced the transfer code to a private care facility, 3 hours east, buried in the forest outside Sisters, Oregon. No signs. No listed staff. But funded by the same biotech company. I posed as a researcher. Paid a price I won't say out loud. It got me 5 minutes. She was in a room with soft walls and white curtains. Sitting by the window. Her hair was shorter. She'd lost weight. But it was her. She looked at me. Her lips trembled. And then, she whispered, "Jake?" I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. She remembered me. For just a moment, in all that white, her eyes came back to life. But the nurse stepped in. "Time's up." "Wait, just one more minute, please. Mr. Hart, if you don't leave now, security will escort you out." I left. But I didn't let go. Because now I knew. She wasn't gone. She was being kept. And I would not stop until she was free. I wasn't the same man anymore. Not the one who used to hold her hand under blankets and read Pablo Neruda aloud while she sketched in the dark. Not the quiet English teacher who wrote poems no one read. That man died somewhere between the rain-slick streets of Portland and the sterile white corridors of that clinic. Love didn't just change me. It reconstructed me. After seeing Emily in that facility, restrained, medicated, her light dimmed but not gone, I knew I had one purpose left in this world. Get her out. But I couldn't do it as Jake Hart, heartbroken boyfriend with no legal rights and a teaching degree. I had to become someone else. Someone who would fight with fire if that's what it took. Miles and I started planning. We found a whistleblower, a former nurse who had worked at Corton's Secure Hold division. She didn't give us her name. Said she'd signed a lifetime NDA. But she talked. And what she said chilled me. They test new treatments on people like Emily, the ones with early onset conditions. They call them voluntary trials, but once someone's inside, they're trapped in red tape. The outside world thinks they're safe. But what's happening inside those walls? It's not therapy. It's control. I couldn't sleep after that. So I stopped trying. We created fake credentials for me, a falsified ID, fabricated employment with a front company tied to their parent organization. Miles hacked their appointment logs. I booked myself as a clinical analyst assigned to observe subject number 19. Emily. I shaved my beard. Cut my hair short. Changed the way I walked. Spoke in clipped, professional tones. I trained myself to hide the tremble in my voice whenever I said her name. On the day I went back in, dressed like one of them, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. But I knew who I was doing it for. Inside, I found her again. Same white room. Same window. She was drawing something faint in the air with her finger, like she could still see colors only she remembered. "Emily," I whispered. She looked at me. This time, her eyes stayed on mine longer. "You came back." I swallowed hard. I promised I would. Her smile was fragile. Like a bridge made of glass. I can't leave, she said. They say I'm unstable. No, I said, stepping closer. They need you to stay because if you leave, the world finds out what they've done. We had minutes. I gave her a small flash drive, hidden in a crayon box. Miles is outside. Once he gets this, we'll have enough to take legal action. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Her hands were trembling. I don't know who I am anymore, she said softly. I took her hand. You're Emily. You're the girl who made pancakes in the middle of the night. Who painted with her heart wide open. You're the girl who made me someone. You're still her. I see her. A tear rolled down her cheek. I remember. The rain. So do I. The next 48 hours were chaos. Miles leaked the internal files. The press picked it up. A senator opened a public inquiry. Protesters gathered outside the research lab. Lawsuits were filed. Investigators arrived. 2 days later, I was arrested trying to check on her. Trespassing, impersonation, breach of federal protocols. I spent a night in jail. It was the best night of my life. Because the next morning, a lawyer handed me a copy of an emergency transfer order. Emily had been released into family care. They were letting her go. When she walked out of that building, wrapped in a gray hoodie, her hair tied back, and her eyes clearer than I'd seen in months, I could barely breathe. She paused when she saw me. Limped a little. Then ran. Right into my arms. I'm not the same, she whispered. I know, I said. Neither am I. And I meant it. Because love, real love, doesn't leave you untouched. It leaves scars. Changes your shape. Steals parts of you and gives you new ones in return. I wasn't who I was. But I was who she needed. We didn't get a fairy tale. No neat ending. No credits rolling over sunlit fields and swelling music. We got something quieter. Something harder. But something real. After Emily came home, life didn't snap back into place like I used to dream it would. She had good days, moments of clarity where she'd smile at me the way she used to, where we'd cook together and she'd hum that off-key song just to make me laugh. But there were also the other days. The dark ones. Where she'd wake up and forget where she was. Who she was. Who I was. And every time that happened, it broke me, no less than the first time. It felt like watching someone you love drown in front of you, reaching out for help, but the water kept rising, and your arms weren't long enough. Still, I stayed. Not out of obligation. Not out of guilt. But because I loved her. And love, I've learned, isn't always beautiful. It's not always soft. Sometimes, love is carrying someone when they can't walk anymore. Holding them while they forget your name. Waking up every day knowing that the person you adore may vanish inside their own mind, and choosing them anyway. One evening, she looked at me while we were sitting on the couch, her head against my shoulder, and said, "Do you ever wish you'd just let me disappear?" The question shattered me. "No," I whispered. "You had to become someone else for me. You gave up your life." I took her hand, pressing it to my heart. "This is my life." We moved to a small house near the coast. Nothing fancy. Just wood floors, sea breeze, and light through the windows. She painted again, sometimes in circles, sometimes nothing at all. I started writing again too. Not poetry this time. Letters. To her. Every day, I wrote her a letter. Even if she didn't remember them tomorrow, they reminded me who she was. Who we were. And sometimes, just sometimes, she'd read one and smile, that old, knowing smile, and say, "I think I remember this." And that was enough. That was everything. I don't know how long we'll have. I've stopped asking those questions. Stopped counting the days. Because the truth is, love and pain are the same thing, they live in the same place. One doesn't exist without the other. You don't get to keep the beauty without carrying the sorrow. It's part of the deal. Part of the cost. But if I had to choose again, even knowing what it would take, what it would break, I'd choose her. Every time. So no, this isn't a happy ending. But it's a real one. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful kind there is.